Hey everybody, welcome back to this. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths, and today I am so excited to introduce you all to Gerard Littlejohn and John Bonney. They are two amazing people that I've known prior to actually meeting them. So this is the first time that we've met, and we're speaking live. But I knew about them from dear friends of mine who have just been bragging about the amazing things these guys are doing. They're both connected because they are associated with Sports Biz Camps. So we are going to do a little bit of a different spin to today's show. We're going to talk about Sports Biz Camp, what it is, what they're doing, and we're also, of course, going to go into their evolutions and the impact that they're trying to make. So without further delay and my chatter, I'm going to introduce you, Gerard and John. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Super excited about this. Already, we've had a little bit of conversation before, and I'm just excited to be on this platform and just communicate, and then also be alongside someone like John, who I admire. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this opportunity. Thank you so much. Me and Gerard was able to work in the past with Sports Biz Camps, help me a lot with content. So it's great to be on this platform so we can be able to amplify our voices.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, I'm going to give you some context. First, a little context in Gerard and John. So we have a next gen episode. So if we were not doing this the two together, John would be a next genner. He is in the middle of college, hasn't even graduated yet, and making moves. Gerard is established in his career, has been making moves for a while. So that's just a little bit of context to where they are in their journeys. Also, so I actually first knew, and I messaged you both about this the other day when we were emailing, but I first knew about Sports Biz Camps because the first next gen guest I had on the show was a guy named Christian Murray, who I believe has been an alum and has stayed involved in mentoring people. So shout out to Christian. He and I were just chatting recently. I try to make sure I continue to have some impact. And then from there, my good friend Vanessa Taveras, who's also been on the show, she and I were former colleagues, have become super good friends. She's a board member. And then I got introduced to the co-founder, Patrick Stack. He's also the executive director. So folks who are listening, wanted to give you a little bit of that context of how we all came to know each other. Gerard and I also had this session before we hit record where we were kind of having this great conversation about common people that we know. And so we'll get into all that later. But 6 degrees of separation, especially in the sports and marketing world.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into Sports Biz Camps, and again, continuing to give the audience here some context to what is Sports Biz Camps and what's the mission of the organization.
For sure.
Either one of you want to take it?
I'll take it on. Again, I'm Gerard. Just like Vanessa, I have the pleasure of being on the board with Sports Biz Camps. I'm actually the board president. I've been in that role now for a few months, but I've been involved with the organization almost since its inception. Pat, who you mentioned, is our executive director. More than anything, he's one of my best friends. We've known each other in the industry, almost probably 10 years now, a little over 10 years. And what I love about Pat is that we're able to have open and honest conversations. He is a white guy who grew up in Ohio. I'm a black dude that has grown up in North Carolina, so we have vastly different experiences. And just from the onset, when Pat and I met, we were just able to have open and honest conversations about, now living in North Carolina, or both of our various degrees and paths in getting into the sports industry. And so more than anything, he's a close friend, but he has a heart for this work. And so really what we do at Sports Biz Camps, our mission statement, is that we're changing the lives of underrepresented high school and college athletes, underrepresented high school and college students through sports business. And how do we do that? We do that through awareness, access, and acceleration. And I'll get into my story a little bit more, but it's really about programming. It's really about how do we prepare college students like John for their career? How do we create that pipeline of getting people who are interested in working in sports, connecting them directly to sports industry professionals? And then for high school students, how do we prepare them for college and get them on a track if they have interest in being in sports business? And for me, just kind of as a teaser, I had no idea any of this stuff ever existed when I was in high school, right? I didn't know about sports business until I was well into college. And for a program like this to exist, just simply to, some people may call it soft skills, but just to prepare kids for college, to prepare college kids for their careers, it's huge. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. We've served, over 100 college students. We've served 180 plus high school students across all these different cities, right? Charlotte, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. So now we've expanded. Just the industry professionals, we've been able to connect them to over 150, right? Placing kids in internships. We've placed 15 college students in internships and entry-level roles. So there's so much that we've done, launched during a pandemic, and I have a heart for this work. And the real reason, again, I'll get into it later, but the real reason is I would have been attending these programs. I came from a single-parent home. Again, just didn't have knowledge space of this even being something that I could aspire to have a career in. And so I'm just passionate about the work that we do.
Yeah. No, it's so awesome. And John, I want to make sure that we give you a minute to give some of, your take on what you all are doing and, through your lens. But I also, I was thinking about this morning before, obviously preparing for our discussion today. And it's so interesting because people talk about sports as, wanting it's gotten more inclusive, air quotes, right? Or wanting it, or that it's sports marketing and sports business is this inclusive landscape. But it's the question of is that the truth? Is that what's really going on? And actually, how do we make it more inclusive? And that's one of the things that I love about what I understand this platform, this program to be, is about you have to have the vehicles that actually make it inclusive, and you actually help people, on their journey rather than just random placement, you know what I mean? And so that's, to me, one of the things that I think is so awesome is that it really does, again, seem to me like a vehicle to create change and to create lasting change. So John, anything else you want to add about what you all are doing with Sports Biz and any of maybe the programs, the platforms that you have?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, currently, we're in the summer position where we're helping a lot of high school students, showing them what's possible in the sports business world. They're being introduced to a bunch of different companies. They're learning some good work experience and just getting the type of tools to help them navigate their ways in this industry as high schoolers. Where I come in, I focus in alumni engagement, where I try to help college students become more career readiness by outreaching and trying to let them be more aware about the platforms that we have virtually, exposing them to industry professionals, and just trying to help them become career readiness with the opportunities that we have with our sponsored companies. It was truly an impactful platform for me. A year ago, I wouldn't have thought that I would have grown to the level that I am now, but having Sports Biz Camps as this vehicle, as this tool that allowed me to be aware and have access and then accelerate was truly impactful. And then, as he can say, he helped me have these honest conversations of how the industry really looks like. And I spent time during this Navigate toolkit where we would have these honest conversations, and he was trying to prepare me for if a setting is not as inclusive, how do I navigate those ways? So Sports Biz Camps is such a great platform, and I take so much pride in it because Gerard, as he said, he would have been a part of this if he knew about this when he was younger. I was looking for resources just like this, and it took me some time. And as I got a part of Sports Biz Camps, I wanted to make sure that all college students are aware of this type of resource in this platform.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. It's so funny when I think about, I think back to when I was in high school and college. I did not have a clue. I was just obsessed with basketball. I played basketball in college. I just wanted to, I was rabid fan, right? I mean, my bedroom was Michael Jordan posters and the whole nine. But I literally didn't know the avenues. And it's so interesting to me when I'm talking to people who have been coming up, and, the fact that people, when they say to me, like, I want to work in sports marketing, I'm usually like, what do you think that means? So, and usually it's very funny, wild, the, responses I usually get. So I love the fact that you're giving all people that experience and that hands-on, and also giving them the ability to, as you're saying, like awareness and access, so they can touch and feel what does it actually mean to work in sports business, and what I just think it's so different than what's in textbooks. And I know it's evolved since I was younger, but I just think that the reality, giving people that touching it and tasting it is so important. So
I mean, it's evolved. This is where I love this platform where we can have honest conversation. It's evolved to where I think a once very hard to attain industry is now a lot more accessible as we think about one of our key pillars: awareness, access, and acceleration. But when you look at overall, I think we look at sports and we think about who we see on the field, and oftentimes we see a lot of, John and myself, we're both black men. You see a lot of that on the basketball court, on the football field. But when you go behind the scenes and you look in team front offices, or you look in agency rosters, or you look at whatever property within sports, up until the last few years, you wouldn't see a face like ours, or you wouldn't always see women in decision making, or you wouldn't see LGBTQ plus, or you wouldn't see some of the things that I think we're trending in the right direction. But I think overall, what has been typically void is the awareness, again, of just knowing that this is even feasible, right? I grew up in North Carolina. We were talking about a little bit before we started recording. I grew up in North Carolina, where, in heavily rural North Carolina, where you often only see people working in furniture factories, or you see people working in quick service retail jobs. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can only be what you see. And even to me, what was foreign is I live in Charlotte now, and I'm maybe a mile from uptown, and I drive past Bank of America and Wells Fargo and Ally and Truist and all these different banks. Even that to me was foreign, right? Like, just being able to come to Charlotte and think that I could have a job working in a skyscraper, that was foreign to me. And so to work in sports was just not something that I even knew was possible. Much like you, I was an athlete in elementary school and middle school and high school, and played football and ran track and did all these different things. But I'd watch a basketball game and Michael Jordan and Gary Payton do their post-game interviews, and I thought people just left. I had no idea that there was marketing and HR and now graphic design, and John talks about content like that didn't exist, right? Not to me, right? And it wasn't until later on in life till I realized, like, no, there's a whole industry beyond this. And again, once I really figured that out, I was well into college. I was about to do an internship like John is doing right now with the Knicks. And so, I'm proud of students like John, because he's so much further along on his walk and on his path than I ever was. And so for me to have a vehicle like Sports Biz Camps, to be able to already provide students with that awareness that this is something that you can attain, that you don't have to play sports to be involved in sports. You can actually do more with a pen than you can with a ball. To know that there's access, to know then after we give people access and the access and the awareness, then they can be accelerated. And so someone like John, who's been through our programs, who's now been made aware of what we're doing, is now accelerating in his career already without even having graduated college. He's already on a path of acceleration because he's been able to do step 1 and step 2, and now step 3 is he's taken off in his career. And so it's one of the main reasons that I do this, is because I want to be able to find the next Gerard, the next John, right? And so how do we 2x, 3x, 4x continue to multiply? And that's how we diversify the sports industry. That is how we change lives through underrepresented folks.
It's interesting that you say that, because I figured out what was possible actually around like the age of 14. So a little bit about my background. My family's from Ghana. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So coming from those humble beginnings, my family came to another country to pursue a better life. for my, two older brothers and I. So I watched them. I built this foundation as I watched them overcome adversity, trying to make a living in New York City. But then also, while they were doing it, they were always level-headed because they always had the utmost faith in God. And like where I come from, a lot of people that play sports, I grew up playing basketball, and I took it upon myself in 6th grade that this is something I want to pursue. So as curious and motivated as I was as an athlete, I would always try to figure out what resources were out there, what type of free basketball programs can I go to. So everyone knew me when I was, in middle school. I was traveling all around New York City, finding every single opportunity I can go into. Lucky enough, through this organization called Pro Hoops, as they were training me, they were also exposing me to the business side of sports. And I was lucky enough, as Gerard had referenced, you can only be what you see at that time. I saw, a Black agent from Excel, and I was just like, oh, this is interesting. I never really saw this, and just kind of seeing the life that he was living. So from that moment, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to pursue sports, I want to have a plan B. And that plan B is that I want to find somehow, some way, work in the business of sports. So I kind of had that foundation when I was around 14 of being motivated, being curious, and trying to figure out all possible opportunities. So I've been doing that for a little bit. And as I was still using basketball as my meal ticket, I was lucky enough to use it to get me out of New York City to grow a different perspective and go to a boarding school in Georgia, which I had mentioned before. And that kind of helped me become more well-rounded. But at that moment, I remember sitting in my boarding school in sophomore, like, what do I need to do to get ahead of the game, right? When I graduate, I want to already have my foot in the door. So it's kind of no surprise of like where I am now. But at that moment, I was like, what is the certain things that I can do? So I was already smart enough to be able to like leverage networking, leverage meeting people. As I'm also playing in tournaments, meet the people that's organizing this tournament. So I kind of had this natural instincts of doing it. So I guess it was a year later from now where I remember just starting my college career, but also just working some part-time jobs. And I remember like, this is not the life that I want to do. I want to work and enjoy something that I love. And I remember just same thing, as curious as I am since I was in middle school, trying to search up free resources on the internet. Lucky enough, I had this algorithm on TikTok that just, said, if you want to work in sports, you should attend Sports Biz Camps. At that moment, yeah,
Oh,
seriously.
wow.
So from that moment, I was like, I'm going to take it and run with it. So I read up on Sports Biz Camps. I was able to develop like my resume, my elevator pitch, all these essential steps that helped me become more well-rounded before going into Sports Biz Camps. So that's like the awareness part. Now that I've got accepted into the Higher Insights Expo, I had access to all of these industry professionals. And from then on, once I got my foot in the door, I said, I'm going to take it and run with it. And I'm going to try to go as far as I can. So I was lucky enough that I kind of had the plan, but SBC gave me the platform. And a year later, I couldn't be more thankful for where I am now.
That's incredible. And I also would like you to know that as you're saying this, I'm just so amazed. I literally am like, holy shit, this guy was heads above where I was. Again, I was just like, let me ball. Like, I never thought about the business side. And I was actually just talking about this the other day. So when I started working in sports in the NBA family, I was telling you about this earlier. First it was the WNBA, then it with Nike, then it was the NBDL, which is now the G League, then it was the Nets. And I remember I had worked for a few years, and after my first year working in marketing at the Nets, I remember the season started again and I was like, whoa, I didn't know anything when I started last year. You just learn so much. And so I am just, and I didn't have any of that background and all of those type of things. So like, I'm so excited to hear you talk about this. And like, also for those who are listening, like this is the power of this company, of Sports Biz Camps, to, again, all these things that they're talking about, the way that, John, you're already a leader. Again, I talked about it earlier, a next gen leader, the way that you were approaching your life and your career track. And you're just like, I'm going to eat it up, and go grab it and go create your own destiny. But the fact that you found this and it's accelerated you like this is just phenomenal. Like, you're in the middle of college. You talk like you've been in the industry for years.
I want to be as crisp as polished as John, right?
I, I, that's what I was thinking. He was talking, and I was like, I need to take notes from John.
Um, but it's just amazing, and to your point, when you hear John's story, you just hear someone who, once he had the awareness, right? Once he got the access, and the other part of what we do that's so big is the access, and people may hear that and think, well, what's the big deal? Access is social capital, and social capital is how this world has really been able to benefit some, and while also at times being able to exclude others. And why that's important is that, think about it. Whenever a lot of people may be listening to this, and you may be a hiring manager, right? Oftentimes, you're going to hire someone based off of a recommendation or a referral or a friend or whatever that is. And when you are someone like John, who maybe is, growing up, his family came from Ghana, growing up in Brooklyn, right? You don't always have that access. Everyone isn't necessarily born with the silver spoon in their mouth. Not even saying what social economic background they're coming from, but just what networks can they tap into. And it's very hard to tap into this sports industry. You have to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. It's not necessarily the industry that you may have all the accolades and all the education. That really doesn't matter in the sports industry, if we're being honest. It's really more about, oh, that guy you're looking, let me refer you to them. Or you're looking for a really great female executive, let me introduce you to her, right? It's really how this industry works. And I liken it, even a bit to my story. Much like John, I grew up in a household. I made a little bit of reference to it, but I grew up in a single parent household. It was me and my mom, and we grew up I was raised in a house of me, my mom, my grandmother, my aunt, and my cousin. And if you're doing the math, that's 5 people. And we grew up. We started out. We had a 3-bedroom apartment. So that means someone had to double up, and that someone was me. And so I didn't have my own bed till I was 13. And so I just grew up differently than, a lot of other people, I think, in the industry or just overall. And again, grew up playing sports. Sports was an outlet. It's how I had other men, other coaches, kind of pour into me and serve as that father figure at times. And when I get to college, I went to UNC Charlotte, and probably for the first couple of years, wondered about what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I was changing a major and started really reading about public relations is when I really kind of found out what my career path was, and did an inventory of, all right, I've always been a great communicator, always been a great writer. Even to the extent of my senior year in high school, I was the sports editor for our school paper. Only reason is because I was a football player and I was an athlete, and I was the only one at the time who was an athlete who was taking that class. But my journalism teacher said, hey, I want to let you know, like, you're a really, really good writer, and you should consider that when you're figuring out your major. And I'm like, whatever. Like, everyone's talking about technology. At that point in time, it was like management information systems and computer science. And I just wanted to ride that wave because someone was telling me what I should do, instead of me taking inventory of what I wanted to do. And after I kind of have this, come to Jesus moment in college of what is it that I want to do, I saw it again as I take inventory. I'm like, I really love sports. I watch Sports Center all the time. I'm paying attention to stuff, and I'm doing it for free. And I started trying to think of, what am I passionate about? And so I'm passionate about sports. I'm passionate about communicating. I'm passionate about all these things. And we, at the time, had a sports marketing club on campus at UNC Charlotte. And the night that I decided to go, and they were meeting on Wednesdays, the night I decided to go, we had a guest speaker from the Bobcats come and talk about community relations. And they're talking about how they take players to go read at hospitals, or to do player appearances in reading corners, and all these different things that was beyond the court. And again, I had no idea that these things took place. And I just remember coming home, going back to my dorm room, and really saying, that's what I want to do. I want to work in sports. And when it came time for me to do an internship, I talked to my advisor, who, long story short, I have no idea how it happened, but I ended up getting an interview with the Charlotte Bobcats, again, who are the Hornets now, and did an interview, got an internship. But again, I'll reference back to John's story. When I did my internship in the summer, I also, again, because of my social economic background, I was on work study, I was on Pell Grants, I was on all these different things to where I had a work study job on campus. My mom got me a part-time job working at the Marriott where she worked here in Charlotte. And so I had to juggle all of these things while when you think about social capital, I had people in my internship class who, from Auburn, from University of North Carolina, from all these different schools all over, and they were there just for interning. And I'm here in Charlotte, and I still have to manage my life plus have an internship. So there were times that I came in late, that I left early, that I left late, that I came in early, right? And I just wanted to make sure when I did this internship in public relations that I was going to be seen. I wanted to make sure they knew my work ethic, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to make the best out of that opportunity, and I was going to bust my ass to do that. And my supervisor at the time was a gentleman by the name of B.J. Evans, who right now is, I believe, the vice president of communications for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and at that time, one of the few black men who served within public relations in the NBA, and who just took me under his wing. And we would go to lunch and we'd talk maybe 5% about basketball and 95% about life. And we talk about both of us growing up in North Carolina and all these different things, being an only child. So we would just talk and relate. And when it came time for the end of my internship, I went to BJ and said, "Hey, I've talked to my advisor. She said that I could come back and get college credits back before they paid interns, right? So I could get additional college credit if I come back in the fall. Will you let me do that?" And I'll never forget, he looked over at me and he said, "Why would I do that when I could hire you?" And I worked part-time.
That's so cool, by the way.
I worked part-time for the Bobcats in public relations my senior year, and then when it came time for me to graduate, I walked right into a full-time position with the Bobcats in public relations because I had gained that social capital with BJ, right? And because I also had someone who helped accelerate my career, right? Being able to have that additional year interning with the team, just like John is having now an internship with the Knicks, that he's already, when you have those opportunities, it accelerates you in your career. And so being able to have those resources, whether it's financial or otherwise, you have a better chance to compete when you enter into that first phase of your career, which, when you become a mid-level professional, then when you become a senior level professional like I am now, I would have never had that if it wasn't for the fact of someone taking a chance on me knowing what's going on, and then having access to something that otherwise, I wouldn't have had access to if it was just me trying to do it on my own. So that's a big part of Sports Biz Camps, is that we're able to open the door for other folks. And I get excited. Like, I literally get excited about John's story because I see myself in John. I see myself in so many other people. So that is why we do so much of what we do at Sports Biz Camps, because we want to be able to set that trajectory for so many other students.
I thank you so much for sharing all of that. First thing I want to say is both of you have there's a thread in both of your stories where how proactive you were in your own journeys, and you took that initiative every step of the way. Gerard, when we were just talking about your story, you were like, I'm going to prove myself every day. I'm going to go in there and show them what I'm made of. John, you were talking about that too. Gerard, you were talking about, you went to BJ and you were like, this is what I want. You advocated for yourself. And I think that, I know that that's part of what sports biz is, like foundational elements of sports biz. These are all foundational elements of you two as individuals. And I don't want to overlook that. And I want to pause for that because, again, as people are listening to this, as you said earlier, Gerard, like whether there's hiring managers or people are like, wow, like drawing inspiration from your stories. I just think that I was actually thinking about this in an unrelated fashion this morning, just about like you don't like your reality, change your reality. What are you doing to change your reality? And I think there's so much of that you have to have access. You have to have, in order to truly be able to do that. And there's an element where you have to have that passion inside where you're going to take that initiative and you're going to stay proactive with it. And you're going to, like you said, you're going to bust your ass. And so I just think these are markers that I just wanted to make to kind of call out as they were just resonating with me as you were talking. And then for anybody who is like, some people do watch this on video. So if you saw me like smiling like a crazy person. So before we started recording this, Gerard and I realized that we both know BJ very well. BJ is actually going to be on the show in September. He has been a friend of mine. He was like I told Gerard, he was like my roll dog when the two of us were in the early part of our careers. And so I can just attest to what an amazing human he is. And I'm truly excited that he had such a, an impact on your journey. So that's so awesome. So, all right, so we're going to do a little bit of a transition here. Thank you both so much for talking about your evolution, the impact you're trying to make and you are making, and the dog is joining this. I can't really do much about it, sorry. The audience is like, there's Petey yet again. So I just want to be really clear here. Part of what we've talked about it throughout this, but part of what sports business is really doing is a bit of disrupting and dismantling some of that inequity that's been, definitely a part of sports business. And so it's something that we believe so strongly at SLG Impact, and something that I believe. So I just thank you again for talking about that. And I think I would love to hear from you if either one of you or both of you can share if you were like, this is the biggest bit of impact that I'm actually going to go with the acronym right now, so pardon me, the SBC, Sports Biz Camps. If you were like, this is the biggest impact that Sports Biz Camps has had on me, is there one thing that each one of you could say?
Definitely. I would take that. I mean, after Sports Biz Camps, after I was introduced in the Hiring Insights Expo, I was able to land 3 internships after, but also gain almost $8,000 in scholarships. So a part of the growth that I was able to have was kind of the same thing. As I'm being able to juggle things, I still have to be a resident assistant at college to be able to pay for myself financially. So it was great to kind of have that, to mitigate that financial burden through Sports Biz Camps and the generous donors that we have, where I was able to take on various opportunities without having to stress about things financially. So that was truly an impact that Sports Biz Camps had for me. And once I kind of got the ball rolling when I was there, it was such a domino effect where I had access to over 100 industry professionals where they were also referring me to other people. And from then on, I was just being able to kind of build my network, but also kind of have people advocate me whenever I was looking for various opportunities. And it's just been great because everyone recognized me as just being such a great person. And it was just great to have Sports Biz Camps to be able to support me along the way and really invest in me. So that was something I was truly appreciative of, being able to land opportunities, but also have generous donors to say, you know what, I want to invest in this kid's education.
Yeah, that's awesome, actually. And I think that one of the things I read about is the #1 rule for sports biz. So you guys want to reveal what the #1 rule is in sports biz camps?
It's no kid ever pays, right? And that's where I was going when I hear John's story, and you can quantify the impact based on the scholarships that he got, and that's amazing. But I just have to sit in awe. And again, Pat's one of my best friends, so there are times where I'll text him, or we're either at a camp, and you have to come back to the why. And I'll share a real quick story. We had a camp maybe a few weeks ago here in Charlotte, and Dr. Pepper is one of our sponsors, Cure Dr. Pepper. And through that sponsorship, they're able to give a handful of scholarships to the students who attend. And we had a young woman from Greensboro, North Carolina, that attended our camp, and we surprised her with a scholarship. And the tears that came out, and the joy that her mom had driven her down, and it just brought me back to the why. And I can get emotional if I think about it too much. One of my flaws is that I don't sit in the impact that collectively, whether I'm making or overall that Sports Biz Camps is making. But that was just one of those reminder moments when you see the joy and know that her life is going to be changed one way or another. And I think I can speak for Pat and Jeff Longo and Sam, three of the co-founders, and then myself, whether I've been an advisor or a consultant or now serving on the board and chairing it. I mean, to create something, to create an entity like this that has the impact that John is talking about, that these scholarship recipients talk about, as I mentioned before, the 15 students who are now in internships or entry-level roles, the Christian Murrays that you talked about, that you interviewed. I mean, I talked to Christian months, years before he got a job, at working for a football bowl, right? And now just being able to see his career unpack and to be able to coach him through different things, it's unforgettable, right? And it brings you back to the why. And this for me is a why. It's cool that and I don't say this braggingly, but I've been to Super Bowls, I've been to NBA All-Stars, I've been to Final Fours, I've been behind the scenes, I've met so many people, I've garnered so many relationships, I've had so many mentors like a BJ, like a Steve Smith, like so many different people who are in my life. But to hear but to know that you impact others, to know that the door was cracked open for me, I'm going to go back and open it even wider. I want to sling that thing open and let as many other people that I can, based on the access that I now have. It makes the world. And so I have to bring myself back to the why more often than not. But yeah, to know that we create these programs, no student ever pays, and we've created this entity that on one end, we have this pipeline of students that are coming in and getting the programming and then going back out and going into the workspace or now going into college or whatever. And then also we have this, huge list of sponsors from NASCAR to Fox Sports to Octagon, On Location, CSM, Dollar Bank, Truist, Keurig Dr. Pepper. I can keep going, of all these sponsors and donors individually that have come into play and help us build this entity that now is helping so many people. Just amazing. Just amazing.
It's amazing. As you're talking about, I'm literally like get the chills, because I think that a big part of why I focus so much on impact and evolution is like, if I'm not making impact, if I'm not doing something to better like my evolution, other people's evolution, so what the hell am I doing on this planet? Like, I want to do something that, for me, I actually still have it. I have this little piece of paper on my desk. I'm holding it up for those who are listening. It says, do something that means something. I don't know. I just said it one day, and that's how I live my every day. And so I love that that's exactly what this is about. And like, I'm just getting so excited and frankly inspired as I'm listening to it. And so, I know there goes PD again. Sorry. I think also it's probably a really good transition also for us to talk about, if those who are listening, if you're feeling inspired, if you're like, holy, this is an amazing thing that I want to be involved in or I want to be telling people about. I mean, I think that let's talk about that a bit, because I think if someone's listening and they're like, oh, I know a person, a younger person who I think would be a great candidate for it. So, so I would love to hear about, like, how can people get involved, whether it's a candidate or whether it's, you talked about, people can get involved by, participating, you can be a donor, you can be a sponsor. So again, can you talk a bit about that? Because I truly think it's such a compelling story and such a compelling program. I'd love for you guys to share with the audience, how can they think about getting involved?
I'd say, of course, we're a nonprofit, so this programming, it all takes time, it also takes money. And so you can donate. You can go to sportsbizcamps.com, donate so that we can support deserving students. No student ever pays, as I mentioned before. No student ever pays. And so that's a big part of our mission. I think that's a part of our mission that's never going to change. Also, if you're in the industry, we have what's considered industry pros. You donate $150 a year. You're part of our coaching tree, which is essentially our advocacy committee. John talked about his story. I've talked about my story. What's the common thread? We both had someone who advocated for us. We advocated for ourselves, but to have someone in the industry who can advocate for you is going to make all the difference, increases the access, get you in the pipeline, and then all of a sudden you're going to accelerate. So you can be part of our advocacy committee that we rely on as volunteers and in programs, and they help to basically help evangelize our mission. So I would say one of our biggest things is definitely donate. I think the more that we have people who have skin in the game and are vested, it helps us to grow. I mean, we've had so many other sponsors that I've listed out before, so many other donors, and they keep the ship going. John can probably talk a lot more about some of the specific programming that people can get into, but for sure, I would say if you want to be involved, there's a number of different ways, whether it's through our coaching tree that you can donate your money and your time, because that is very valuable. So coaching tree to just being able to give donations, that's going to make the world a difference in our organization.
Okay, so John, before I go to you, I'm going to say I did not know about, I just wrote it down, the advocacy committee. I did not know about it, and I am saying I am going to put myself forward. I am going to commit my donation and participation of my time, so I will follow up with you and Pat afterward. I literally didn't know about it, and I am so excited. So thank you for sharing that part, because I'm in. John, so can you talk just a little bit about, from a participation from a candidate standpoint, like, you know, how would somebody go about, whether there's someone who's listening or they have somebody who they know who they think would be a good candidate? What's the first step for someone
follow
to do?
Sports Biz Camps on Instagram, at Sports Biz Camps, or just follow our LinkedIn as well, because that's where we put most of our platforms on. We're always promoting it. I guess the first step is being aware and being on the lookout for these programs and being able to apply and jump on it. So throughout the fall and the winter, we host a lot of series, college cheat code series, or we host certain platforms such as in the past, Get Ahead Before Graduation with CSM, which also led to a CSM Skills Academy, or Korean Sports Media with Fox Sports. So our sponsors is helping us develop these platforms for college students, and we try to do it year round throughout the semesters. So being on the lookout on our Instagram and following our LinkedIn, we're heavily promoting, or you might just receive an email from me reaching out to your school to try to increase our attendance.
Okay. All right. So that's good. So folks, again, you got lots of ways that you can get involved if you want to. And also, if you hear this and you are compelled, also to share it and to share the stories of Gerard and John and what they're up to, please. You know, we're all helping each other by sharing what's going on. So, so I think we are coming to the end of our conversation today. And I am so grateful to know you both, and am excited to get more involved as I committed to a few minutes ago. And what I'm a little bit going to surprise you guys with this, because I don't think I prepared you with it, but I like to, and I think you've listened to some of the episodes. So what I like to end the episodes with is by asking guests if, you know, we've had the audience listen today. I've been recording for, you know, almost 45 minutes. You know, so, and we've talked about so many things, right? And so if each one of you could share, if you want the audience who've listened to take something away from this, whether it's one or two things, what would that be? Like a message? What would that key takeaway be that you want, you know, people who have been listening today to do, to say, to, I don't know how they operate? Anything you can share on that?
I'll just say, when specifically related to the sports industry that we've been talking about, it's a highly competitive industry. We have aspirations of making it a more inclusive industry. And so we've got to invest within this industry in the same way that, whether it's tech, whether it is STEM, whether it's all these other competitive industries, we've got to invest. And essentially, Sports Biz Camps is like workforce development for the sports industry. And so if we're going to continue to try to make it more inclusive, we have to continue to keep working upstream, making students aware of the careers. And I'm going to sound like a broken record when it comes to these points, but making students aware, giving students access, and then supporting them with resources, whether that's financially, whether that is social capital, anything that's going to be able to help them push through obstacles so that they accelerate. So it really comes back to the awareness, acceleration, and access that's going to help push these kids. And we want to act as that conduit. We want to act as, again, that workforce development entity within sports industry.
From a student perspective, I would just say always continue to be your authentic self. And also, just whenever you get that opportunity, as I said before, take it and run with it. A lot of the things that helped me get to where I was that I was able to take initiative and put myself out there. And it's kind of skills that I naturally had, but that was just the thing that differentiated me from others. So like I said, as I found Sports Biz Camps, I was like, I'm going all in, I'm taking it and running with it, and whatever I get out of it is going to be worth the wait.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you both so much. And folks who have been listening, I truly hope that you feel inspired. I hope that you feel you've got something to share from listening to this today. Thank you both so much for coming on, for being your authentic selves, for being committed to impact. It makes everything worth it. So thank you, everybody. Have an amazing day.